I'm ready to retire. Don't know how to access my super. What does it look like? Look,
Most common question that we get from people is, well, what do I do once I've got my retirement money? What do we do then?
yeah, exactly right. Look, we get this one a lot, so we thought we'd knock out an episode on it and give everyone a bit of an idea of sort of what some different retirement planning strategies or what common ways that people start to access their super can be. So we'll start with one of the really common questions I get, or maybe even common misconceptions that I get. Retirement age, Scott, when is it?
The official government figure is age 67 is when you're eligible to receive the age pension,
Mhm.
but you're actually, assuming you've got appropriate, sufficient and thorough financial planning, you are able to access your superannuation balance at age 60.
Mm.
So there's a 7-year gap there between when you can access your super balance. We can actually get onto the age pension.
Mm.
But Phil, what's your definition of retirement?
The question of when can I retire? I mean, ultimately, whenever the hell you can afford it. If you can afford to retire at 45, more power to you. There is no official retirement age. You can retire whenever the hell you like. The number 67 we hear bandied around a lot, like Scott said, it's just purely when you can access the age pension. So really, my main questions for you, if you ask me when can I retire, are going to be how much money have you got and how long are you going to live?
What I also like to do, and I like to throw one on that one, is that the layer above that is most people go, well, hang on, what? What I like to actually focus on is predominantly you'll want to be spending the same amount of money in retirement than you are at the moment. I find most of our clients, when we speak to them, they might be earning, I don't know, just pick a dollar amount. Let's say it's $100,000 a year as a combined family. And they say, I want to have that same amount in retirement because when I do retire, I'm going to want to do more travel. I want to hang with my grandkids. I might have some more health expenses. I want to do some renovations, whatever it is. Pretty common. So that's really the target that we'll focus on, which is you're able to retire when your assets are in a position to generate your required income for life.
Yeah.
That's the point. You can then retire.
Yep. Yeah, spot on. So, all right, now we know we can retire whenever the hell we like. I've hit age 60. What now? How do I actually retire? When can I start to access my super? So, you mentioned age 60, Scott, and that is the answer, depending on what's going on in your life. So, from age 60, you still need to meet what's called a condition of release. So your superannuation is what's called preserved. It's preserved funds, which means you can't touch it till you're allowed to, basically.
Mm.
And a condition of release from age 60 is that you've left an arrangement of employment. So I wake up one morning after turning 60, I've got the shits with Scott, I ring out and say, mate, I'm out. That's it. I've left an arrangement of employment. I can tick the box on my super form. I'm retired. I can access my super. Now, 3 weeks later, someone might ring me up and go, hey, Phil, you're a pretty good financial advisor. You want to come work for us? And maybe I'm tempted back out of retirement. That's okay. My super is still unlocked. I've still got access to it. It's just that any new contributions I get from that new job are now going to be preserved again until I meet that condition of release.
For those listening, that's a bit of a financial planning flag. That's what Phil was doing there. Seek advice around that, but there's some really good strategies that we can do to assist people with that retirement age area. So make sure you're on that one. Let's say, for example, I've worked really hard and me and my partner, we've got $800,000 in our superannuation account and we've managed to just pay off the house. We've worked really hard and now I'm 62 years old. What do I do? Like physically, how do I get money in my bank account?
Yeah, great question. One of the most common questions I would get from people in their late 50s and early 60s, to be honest. And look, there are a million ways to skin a cat, right? There is a ton of different ways that you can access your retirement funds. You might just decide to wake up one day, ring your super fund, rip the whole lot out and stick it under your mattress. Wouldn't suggest it's a good thing to do, but you could. That's one way of accessing it. Take lump sum withdrawals whenever you feel like it.
And that would look like you would call your superannuation fund. They would send you a withdrawal letter. You would meet a condition of release. You would tick a box saying full withdrawal or a dollar amount withdrawal. You would provide your BSBN account number. You would then submit that with your ID that's usually been certified. You'll have to wait around a week or so, depending on how long it takes and depending on what your super fund is. And then the money will get transferred to you by your super fund in cash into your chosen specific account.
Yeah. Spot on. Should you do it that way? Look, maybe, but for most people, it's probably not the right way or the optimal way. And look, there's a bunch of other sort of more complex products, things like annuities, structured retirement products. We're seeing all these new things coming out off the back of the your super reforms. We're not going to go too deep into those because they are really complex. Don't go just ticking a box on your super fund to go into their lifetime retirement product without getting advice. They're very complex, despite what some internal fund financial planners might tell you. So approach with caution. But the most common thing that we see for most people is that they take what's called an account-based pension. Very simply, that is transferring your current super fund, which is in an account called an accumulation account, from there to an account-based pension. So it's just a change of account type. Carries some cool benefits. So one of the things is you are currently, your money sitting in your accumulation fund, gets investment earnings, it gets income, all that cool stuff. But you give 15% of those investment earnings and income to the government. You pay tax on those. When you retire and you move your money to an account-based pension, those earnings are now tax-free. So, that often represents somewhere around a 1% uplift to your investment returns, purely because you're not giving any to our good friends at the ATA. Nice benefit. You can also then start to draw an income. And in fact, you have to. There are minimum amounts based on your age that you must draw every year if you're in one of those accounts.
We'll call it between 4 and 5%. So, for example, if you've got, say, $200,000, you must take out, we'll call it 10 grand a year minimum. So, if you've got $400,000, you've got to take a minimum of 20 grand a year.
Yeah. That minimum increases as you get older. What about maximums, Scott? Any maximums on what I can take out?
I don't think, in terms of if I got into my 90s, I'm going to have to double check what the maximum, because what's the minimum, what's the max minimum rate? Is that what you're asking?
Oh, no. So I wasn't worrying about the maximum minimum rate. No, I'm just saying, is there any cap on the amount of income I can draw from my retirement account each year? Maximum minimum rate?
When you turn 95 years old, you must draw 14% of your super out per year.
Yeah.
It starts at say, 65 to 74, you got to take 5%. Age 80 to 84, 7%. Age 90 to 94, 11%. And then 95 plus 14%. Main reasons behind this is superannuation in pension phase is the best tax deduction you could possibly get. Everyone complains about how we've got such a high tax rate in this country. Well, the reality is there's some really effective ways to reduce tax, and the pension from your super is the best thing you can possibly get because there's no tax on it.
Love your diligence in answering that question there, Scott, but maybe I should have phrased my question a little bit better. I was asking, is there any maximum or limit on the amount that I can draw from that account every year? The answer to that's no.
Giddy up. Take as much as you want out. You shouldn't, but you can.
You can. Yeah, exactly right. And look, just on that, on the topic of tax too, another really cool thing to note, because I get this question a bit too, is if I am drawing an income out of my super or out of an account-based pension, do I have to pay tax on that money? And again, the answer is no. I think they call it NAIN, I think is the term, non-assessable, non-exempt income. It just doesn't exist. So the tax office don't care about it. It's a nice thing.
So Phil, how much money can I get? So say, for example, I'm the example of a client who's got a combined asset base of, say, $600,000 in super between me and my partner. We own a house outright. How much can we pull out?
Whatever you like.
Interesting. I will point out something that's kind of interesting, and this unfortunately, whenever you've got different types of there's a thing called Nash equilibrium, which is when you play games long enough, there will be an equilibrium found, and then sometimes you've got a benefit to cheating. You want to create games where where cheating doesn't help. And a good example is when you're in traffic and someone cuts in front of you, they've cheated in the game because they've ripped you off whilst you politely were following the rules. That's an example of a non-Nash equilibrium outcome, a non-ideal. Right. So the age pension for a single is $29,000 per year. An age pension for a couple is, drumroll, $44,000 per year. Wait, what? So if you're saying I'm a single, I get $29,000, which is, we'll call it 30. But if I'm a couple, I get 44. So if I'm a single, if two singles are living together, they're going to get nearly 60 grand a year. If you're a couple, you get 44,000 per annum. That creates an incentive to cheat.
Yeah, got it.
Should you do that? Absolutely not. Do not do that. That's literally fraud.
And they're very good at finding out about it.
Well, it's also disappointing that's how so I won't call it a game, but that's how the system has been structured, so that there is an incentive here to cheat.
Yeah, it makes sense though too, because there are absolutely benefits living in a couple from a cash flow and cost perspective. It's cheaper for two people to run a house than it is for two individuals to run two separate houses.
Absolutely. So your example, so the example that I gave of someone who's, say, $600,000 between the two spouses,
yep,
and the house paid off.
Yep.
That person is going to be eligible for the full age pension.
Yeah, 100%.
What is the age pension cutoff, Phil?
Look, between the two of you in total assets. So when they assess you for the age pension, they run two tests. It's an assets test and an income test. We'll focus mostly on the assets test here because that is the one that I would say 99.99% of people that I work with fall under. And look, the cutoff limit you can have, it's a bit over $1.3 million in total assets between both members of the couple. Now, when we say total assets, it's a pretty generous limit. And I say that because they completely exclude your family home. So it's a total of, cars, contents, collectibles, any, boats, jet skis, whatever other toys you got kicking around, money in the bank, investments, the balance of your super, total assets, excluding the family home, right up to 1.3 million bucks before you get cut off from age pension eligibility. Even then, in most cases, you'll probably qualify for the Commonwealth Seniors Healthcare Card, which I call the consolation prize, because that's an income test and it's, again, a pretty generous test.
Of investments that are generating $50,000 to $100,000 per annum anyway, so you don't actually need it. So well done you. You've worked hard and you are a self-funded retiree.
Yeah.
What happens if I've got $1 million flat, $1 million on the nose of assets outside my family house, Phil? Do I get the full age pension?
No, so it'll start to reduce. You put me on the spot here. I think off the top of my head, it's about $3 per thousand over the limit that you are. Your pension will start to reduce by. So beyond that, I think the total limit at the moment is about close enough to 740,000 before you get cut off from the full pension, and it starts to reduce over that amount till you get to the 1.3. So, if you're over that, say you're sitting at 800,000, between 740 and 800, you're going to lose $3 for every thousand of assets that you're over the limit. So again, it's still pretty generous, and we see that with most people. The vast majority of people we work with will start on a part pension, and that will increase over time as they spend some of their own money and their asset base comes down, but also the limits for what you're allowed to have will increase. They're indexed with CPI and they'll go up over time. So, we see that happen. A couple of interesting points to note, or questions I often get asked are, Phil, you said there's an income test. If I'm drawing income from my super, does that mean I'm going to get knocked out and not be able to get the age pension now? The answer to that question is no. Centrelink do not care how much income you are drawing from your account-based pension. You could draw $1 a year, you could draw $100,000 a year. It is not assessable under the income test at all. What they do, and this leads into another really common misconception and thing I get questions about, is they apply a deeming rate. So, you've probably seen it's been on the news. They've just increased the deeming rate. So it's been on the news a lot lately, September 2025, if you're watching this. And I got a lot of panicked phone calls from people. Oh, the government's increasing the deeming rates. Is that going to impact my pension? The answer was no in 100% of cases. It's very simply, a deeming rate is just an amount of interest that the government assumes you're getting on your investments. So they don't care about what you're actually getting or drawing as an income. They just assume you're earning a certain amount of interest. And it's really low, like 2.75% is the highest deeming rate at the moment. Most people are getting, 8, 9, 10s at the moment. So, that's a free hit. That's free income that's not being assessed. It's a good thing. Very rare that you're going to get impacted under the deeming rates unless you're already being assessed under the income test.
Love it. So I want to keep this moving forwards. When I go to retire, dealing with Centrelink also is one of the least fun things you could possibly do, because it penalizes you for being not very good with dealing with the government and not being tech savvy, which is a lot of retirees. When you come to retirement, you've turned 62 years old, you've worked really hard, you've built up this great balance. What it actually physically looks like of when you get the money in your account is we create what's called a pension account. So we split your accounts. Let's say, for example, you had one accumulation account, which is the thing that we've been throwing as much money as we possibly can in to grow it. We now convert that to a pension account. That pension account will start giving you an income. Now you can select however much you want to receive, which is what Phil was talking about. Assuming you're under 79 years old, it's going to be between 4 and 6%. You can draw out however much you want, but that's the minimum. So you got to take some out because you're about to switch your entire superannuation balance into the most tax effective method of any type of investment you've ever received. Zero tax on earnings, zero tax on income. It's a very tax effective environment, as we kept banging on about. You submit the forms, you tick the box, you add your bank account, and usually people on a fortnightly or monthly basis will have a dollar amount that they wish to receive in their account. It could be, $2 or $3 grand a month or $5 grand a month or whatever that dollar amount is. and that is the pension that you receive. So now you're paying yourself effectively. You've worked really hard to build up this great asset. We've now flicked it over to an income stream, producing your regular income in pension phase. Giddy up, off we go. Now, ideally, the investments within that are offsetting the income. They're actually generating enough money that you are now taking money out, but the pension account is staying where it is because it's in a very tax-friendly environment, and also hopefully you've got a big enough balance that you're able to retain it.
Yeah. And with markets
Phil,
as good as they have been, that's been a very real scenario for a lot of people. A lot of people have actually been growing while storing an income lately, which is
absolutely.
nice
So
thing.
Phil, what does it look like if I start taking my money down? Am I able to take a pension account, and can I take both, or do I have to have one or the other?
Yeah,
Do I have to take it?
In a perfect world, if you're eligible for some age pension, those two things work hand in hand. So, if you're working with us, we'll sit down and we'll work out, well, what are your income needs? That's the first part. You need X amount of dollars a year. I don't know. I need 100 grand a year. Cool. That's great. We'll have a look at your assets and income, work out how much age pension you're going to get. Okay. So you're going to get 20 grand a year in age pension. That's cool. You need another 80 grand a year that you'll draw down from your account-based pension or your superannuation pension. You can nominate the frequency, fortnightly, monthly, annually. Most people I see pick something in line with what their pay cycle was, because that's how you're used to budgeting. And away we go. So that's it in its simplest form. We'll have different people. Maybe you've got some goals along the way, like a trip or whatever. So maybe you draw enough regular income for your day-to-day living expenses and a lump sum once a year for your holiday, those kind of things, which we can help set up for you. But yeah, it's nice and simple. The one thing you want to pay really close attention to, though, as well, is how your money's invested within that structure. You still need it invested. You still need it working hard for you. You need to get enough growth to keep ahead of inflation, or, ahead of the increase of cost of living, but make sure that money's going to last for as long as possible. So you still need some smart investment decisions made there, but you also need to be a bit conservative about your short-term income needs and be a bit more sensible with this, so that, your day-to-day spending is protected in the event of a market, downturn and that sort of thing. So that's the sort of stuff that we're sitting down and talking to you about as we get closer to making those decisions around retirement and kicking this whole sort of thing off. So based on that, Scott, if I'm thinking about retirement, I'm starting to think about where to go next. Like, well, what do I do? When should I be talking to someone or thinking about this sort of stuff?
Well, I mean, yesterday, really. But assuming you didn't do it yesterday, today's the best day to start doing it. You need to be projecting what you're going to be spending in retirement. Crazy question to ask, because it could be 20 years away. But you can assume you're going to be spending roughly the same amount of money as you would today, less whatever your housing expenses are, because hopefully by that time you paid off your mortgage and you are debt-free on the property. You need to fill in the forms, make sure you've got... There's just some more small things. Make sure ideally you've got a passport. Like, it's super frustrating just having a driver's license. If you can make sure you renew your passport by an ongoing basis, it just makes it so much easier when you're dealing with Centrelink, Medicare. Make sure you've got the MyGov app at strong. It's so difficult to deal with if you don't have that. And if you don't have a passport, if you weren't born in Australia, well, you're going to have to call them. It's just such a pain in the ass. So that's probably a couple of pro tips that I give you right now, which is, make sure you're going to renew your passport. If you don't have a passport, get one at $600. It's annoying, but once you've got it for life. The My ID app, you can download it from the app stores. It's the green and gold one with the kangaroo. I would be making sure the assets inside my superannuation fit where I want to be, making sure that they are sufficiently invested and diversified to both protect but also grow. Like, we can't put everything under the mattress. We do actually have to have growth, because we've got the tax, inflation, and deeming rates chasing you, forcing you to do something with your super, make sure it's working. Possibly can be, and then get back to work. That's probably my take on it, Phil. What's your take?
They are really great tips, actually, and they're little things that you often don't think about. Like, if you've got an expired driver's license and you want to start drawing from your pension, well, good luck. It ain't happening until you've got a current one. Stuff like that. Just really simple things you may not think about can be game stoppers. Same as making sure you've got a bank account that's in the same name as the super fund, because they're going to want to see certified bank statements before any money's getting paid out. All this stuff's security to protect you, and it should be there. It's fiddly. Make sure you got all that stuff sorted. So just some little things. Like I mentioned earlier, we're recording this in September 25. These rules change all the time. The way you can do stuff changes all the time. Products, new products are coming out all the time, and ways to access your money and all that sort of thing. So, make sure you are seeking advice when the time comes. And, we have really just touched on the simpler side of retirement planning. There are a million other more complex products out there that we can and from time to time do use if they suit the scenario. We just want to give you a general taste of what most people do, but certainly this isn't the be all and end all of what's out there. So, consider your position. Make sure you speak to someone. If you're one of our clients and you're thinking about retiring, well, I bloody hope you've spoken to us about it already. But if you haven't, give us a ring and, pass this on to any friends and family that are starting to think about it.
So Phil, let's summarize. Age pension, eligible from age 67. You can access your super from age 60.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to have an understanding of what you're going to be spending in retirement. And that starts with getting as much money as you possibly can at the moment. Yep. Most clients that we see will, for probably the first between 6 to 10 years, just live off the income that their super account is generating. And then over time, they will start eating the capital. And that's okay, because then you're also able to take a greater level of age pension.
Sure.
And that will help buffer it and keep your super balance to retire as long as possible. So it's really important that we make sure that we've got these elements moving forwards. There's several different other items that you need to make sure, but
all right, well, look, hopefully this has been of some use to you and you've learned a little bit. But, if you're starting to think about it, reach out and have a chat as always. But otherwise, we'll see you for the next one.
Thanks, guys.